Hi there everyone, welcome to Bread and Better here on YouTube. My name's Lainey and today I want to show you how to make my simple sourdough sandwich loaf. You can do this two ways. You can have a white loaf and only use all-purpose flour, or you can substitute 300 grams of the all-purpose flour with 300 grams of whole wheat flour and have a wheat loaf. Like I said, I use all-purpose flour, and the original recipe calls for just that, but you can make it whole wheat if you would like. I add honey, sea salt, butter, and of course a ripe and active sourdough starter is key. For the written recipe and extra details about this recipe, you can find it in the description below. Let's start by measuring out all of our ingredients. You can go ahead and measure your water, honey, and starter into the bowl of your stand mixer. And you'll see that I'm using grams, but the recipe does have cup measurements as well. However, I always recommend using grams because it's more exact and you will have a more consistent outcome when using grams as opposed to the imperial system. One trick to know if your starter is ready to be used and active enough is when you drop it into your bowl of water, it will actually float on top. This is just one way to know because all of the gas that's been released is what's keeping that afloat, which just means that it's active and happy and good to go for baking. Once you've whisked your water, honey, and salt together, you can go ahead and add your flours on top of those wet ingredients. I like to personally use King Arthur's brand of flours just because they're never bleached or enriched, which I prefer, and then you can also buy organic versions of either whole wheat or all-purpose. After you've added your flours, just sprinkle in your sea salt. And some people say that salt should always go on top when you're mixing bread because it interferes with the yeast or can kill it, but I'm not so sure that it will. I just follow that because it's what has been ingrained into my mind. Now that all your ingredients, except for your butter, are in the bowl of the stand mixer, go ahead and turn it on to medium-low speed, about setting 2 or 3 on the KitchenAid, and just let it knead the dough until all of it comes together and no dry spots remain. I like to gather my dough into one clump and just make sure all the flour has been mixed in from the bottom of the bowl, and then I will take it off my stand mixer, cover it with a plate, and now it's going to be resting for 30 minutes. This will give the dough time to relax and the water to be absorbed before we add the butter. I decided I wanted to make a maple latte while the dough was relaxing. This is my favorite latte. I don't always drink my coffee like this. Sometimes I just want it black or with just a little bit of cream in it. But today I was really wanting my maple latte, which I love. I'm not an expert on coffee by any means, but if anyone has any suggestions, I am always open. I'm always wanting to try new drinks or like new tips and tricks on how to pull like the perfect espresso shot. I don't know very much about it, but I'm wanting to learn. Also, I would just like to say this is as close as it gets for latte art for me. I have no idea how to do anything fancy or fun. So I just make a big frothy mess and just dump it straight on top. And it's yummy and good. So I just keep doing it and I haven't changed it. But one day it would be very cool to know how to make a cool design and how people do that. Alright, so it has been 30 minutes. Go ahead and put your bowl back on your stand mixer, attach your dough hook, and we're going to get ready to add in our softened butter. I like to cut my butter into tablespoons just because it makes it easier for the mixer to incorporate it all throughout the dough. And we're just gonna add it all within the first minute of mixing. So you'll mix the dough for a total of 6 to 8 minutes, and within that first minute is when you're gonna add the butter. Don't worry about trying to space it out within those 6 to 8 minutes. Just go ahead and add it all within that first minute. When needed, you can stop your mixer and just scrape down the sides of the bowl because the butter, you will notice, will get stuck up there and won't get incorporated. Once all the butter has been scraped into the dough, you're going to just let it mix for that 6 to 8 minutes. And during this time, the gluten will develop and the dough will get stronger, and that's really, really ideal for bread making. Kneading your dough for 6 to 8 minutes is more of a guideline than a necessity. In order to really tell if your dough has been kneaded enough, you're going to want to do a test. It's called a window pane test, and this test is when you just take a portion of the dough, about a golf ball size, and you just stretch it with your fingers and pull at the edges and pull very gently until you'll start to see light pass through when you hold it up to a window or a light in your house. And the key is it shouldn't rip. If it doesn't rip, then it's ready to move to the next stage. If it does rip, then it needs to be kneaded for a little bit longer, even if you've already kneaded it for 6 to 8 minutes. Go ahead and knead it for another minute and then try the window pane test again. Once your dough has passed the window pane test, go ahead and cover your bowl and set your timer for 3 hours. We're going to let our dough rest and grow and develop, and this is called bulk fermentation. In the recipe, I have it written that this will take anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. What you're looking for when it's done is that it's almost doubled in size, if not doubled, and it will have bubbles starting to form on the top and start to deflate when pressed on. While I'm letting the dough rest, I decided it would be a good time to wash some dishes and go ahead and oil my pans. You can really use any kind of oil or fat you have on hand to do this part. One time I used butter and that worked just fine. Another time I used olive oil, but today I was really just feeling like using coconut oil because I hadn't used it before. And as you'll see in the end, it actually turned out very nicely and gave the bread a nice crust. Probably important to mention, my loaf pans are 5 by 9 inches and 2.5 inches deep. I think you could use a bigger loaf pan if you don't have this size, but I wouldn't go smaller. It has now been 3 hours and I'm going to go ahead and check my dough and see how it's doing. It looked nice and puffy, so I went ahead and punched it down to deflate the dough and remove some of the air, and then I used my bowl scraper to scrape around the edges and dump it out onto the counter. For the next part, you can divide the dough in two ways. You can eyeball it and just hope that they're proportional, which is perfectly fine, or you can scale them out like I'm doing here. Today I was feeling like being a perfectionist, so this is what I did, but there are definitely days when I just eyeball it and go with the quicker option. Now I'm just beginning the pre-shaping process by taking the edges and tucking them into the center of the dough. I'll flip it over, so now the seam is on the bottom, and then I'm just using my hands and the surface of the counter to make the bottom smooth and the top have a nice surface tension to it. And I'm going to go ahead and start that same process with the second loaf. This is something that feels really unnatural at first, but as time goes on will become more natural to you. You just have to think of yourself as tucking the top of the dough into the bottom as you pull it towards you and push it away from you. Go ahead and dust your counter with flour and the tops of the dough, and then cover them with a tea towel and set your timer for 15 minutes so they can relax. During this time, I just decided to get as many dishes done as I could, so I didn't have them piling up after. I made some yogurt today in my Instant Pot, so that is why you see me washing that. The 15 minutes are up and the loaves look beautiful, and we are just going to go into our final shaping process by punching down the dough again, deflating some of that gas and air that has built up, and flatten it into a rectangular shape. I like to then fold the top part about 1/4 of the way down and then tuck the two corners in, and then the middle in, and then fold the bottom 1/4 of the way up and then tuck the two corners in, and then just roll the whole thing into a log. Once it is in a log shape, I go ahead and use the counter to kind of try to press the seam together, and then use my hands to pinch the seam together. I then use the same process we did in the pre-shaping stage to kind of smooth the bottom of the dough using my hands and pressure and the counter, and creating a nice surface tension on the top of the dough. Once the seam looks good and sealed, go ahead and just drop that loaf into your oiled loaf pan and begin the shaping process in the same exact way with the next loaf. I think I shape my loaves a little differently each time I do it. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think it may just be the day and whatever I'm feeling, but the point is just to get it into a workable shape with a closed seam and a nice surface tension, and it should be in a shape that's cylinder-like so it bakes and becomes a beautiful bread loaf in the end. Once your loaves are shaped to your liking, go ahead and place them in their oiled pans and cover them with plastic wrap. Once they're covered, go ahead and place them in the fridge for a long cold proofing period. They'll be here for 12 to 14 hours, so the next day when you wake up, they'll be puffy and ready to bake. Good morning, it is the following day. Let's get ready to bake our loaves. I like like to start my mornings by unloading the dishwasher and getting everything in the kitchen ready for the day. I find when I don't unload the dishwasher, I tend to just put dishes in the sink and leave them there. So this way I have an incentive of, okay, the dishwasher's already unloaded, all I have to do is rinse the plate and put it in there. So it keeps the kitchen tidy and clean, and I get it over with first thing in the morning, which is nice. When you're ready to start making your bread, go ahead and just preheat the oven to 375. While that was preheating, I decided I wanted to make myself some breakfast. So join me for my very typical everyday breakfast that I make, and I never get tired of it, so it's okay that I eat it every day. Once I got my breakfast made, it was time to put the loaves in because the oven was preheated. So I just uncovered them really quick. Usually at this point, you could score the loaves with a knife or a bread lom by just doing one slash down the middle. I honestly forgot to, and I just stuck them in and it was fine. But usually it just helps with oven spring and releasing tension on the surface. Go ahead and set your timer for 45 minutes and let that bread bake, and I'm gonna enjoy my breakfast while it does. It has been 45 minutes, so I'm gonna check my bread. It looks nice, it looks a little light, so I decided to temp it, and it is reading about 184 on the thermometer. You know it's done when it reads 190, so I decided to let it bake for 5 more minutes. The bread is done and absolutely beautiful. If you want to, you can go ahead and brush it with some melted butter. I just rubbed a stick of butter on it, and that seemed to do the trick. Let them cool in their pans for about 15 minutes, and then after that 15 minutes, go ahead and flip them out onto a wire rack and let them cool completely before cutting into them. Once they've cooled completely, you can go ahead and slice the bread. I like to slice mine all at once usually, and then I'll put it in the freezer so that I can just grab a slice out and toast it whenever I want and eat it with my breakfast. I find storing the bread like this to be really convenient, and it also will last longer in the freezer. You can store it on the counter for probably around 3 to 5 days, or in the fridge for up to a week, but in the freezer it lasts for a long time, probably months, before it gets freezer burn or just isn't any good anymore. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and feel equipped to make this bread at home. If you have any questions, please comment them below. And if you have any future recipes you would like to see on this blog, I am so open to suggestions. With that, I hope you will go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this.